Many of us, when we wake up and ask someone around us, how long have I been asleep? The answer might be, you've been sleeping for 5 hours. And we react with surprise, 5 hours? I feel like I barely slept for half an hour. Time seems to pass incredibly fast from the moment we close our eyes until we open them again. Sometimes we don't even feel it. You rest your head on the pillow and in what feels like a blink, the alarm is already ringing. So what's the reason behind this? Welcome to Cronix. Today, we're answering the question, why does time pass so quickly when we sleep? But before we get started, if you're new to the channel, don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our latest videos. Time is the same for all of us on Earth, 24 hours in a day, with each hour consisting of 60 minutes. Whether you're awake, asleep, happy, or sad, time remains constant for everyone. The only thing that differs from person to person is how we perceive time. That's why there's a famous quote attributed to Einstein, "Put your hand on a hot stove for a minute, and it will feel like an hour. Sit with someone you love for an hour, and it will feel like a minute." This quote perfectly captures the paradox of time and how our perception of it changes based on our experiences. Our perception of time can vary drastically depending on the situation, especially when we're asleep. But to understand why we don't feel time passing while we sleep, we first need to understand how we perceive time when we're awake. Even though humans have a biological clock that regulates sleep and wake cycles, our bodies don't actually have a sensory organ dedicated to directly perceiving time. Instead, our brain relies on external sensory inputs to estimate time. It processes information from our surroundings, like light and darkness, the sun and moon, to create a sense of time. But that's not all. Events and movement also play a crucial role. Whether it's objects moving around us or our own movement from one place to another, these cues help our brain track the passage of time. All these factors serve as indicators of time passing. In fact, time itself is just a measure of movement. For example, imagine someone sitting in a room reading a book. If they get deeply absorbed in reading and the room has no clock, phone, or open window, it would be very difficult for them to estimate how long they've been reading. That's because there are no external references to help gauge the passage of time. The same exact thing happens when you're asleep. While we sleep, the brain doesn't record what's happening around us. Instead, it focuses on essential processes like repairing and regenerating the body. Even our primary senses, like sight and hearing, which help us perceive time, are either completely inactive or functioning at a minimal level. In other words, when we're asleep, it's as if the world around us stops moving until we wake up. That's why it's incredibly difficult for the brain to track the passing seconds, minutes, and hours while we sleep. But does it stop there? Actually, no. There's another reason behind this phenomenon. One of the key ways we perceive time is through memory formation. What does that mean? Simply put, our judgment of time is largely based on the number of memories we create during a given period. For example, imagine someone leaves home to run a few errands without a watch, phone, or any way to check the time, and they're also not allowed to ask anyone for it. After they finish their errands and return home, we can calculate how much time they actually spent outside. Let's say it was 3 hours, but how long do you think they felt like they were out? But even though he has no way of knowing the exact time, if we ask him, how long do you think you spent outside? He might guess around 2.5 to 3 hours, which is surprisingly close to the actual time. If we ask him how he estimated that, he'll likely say something like, "Well, I met someone on the bus and chatted for about half an hour, spent around an hour at a certain place, waited for about 15 minutes before getting a ride, and so on." In other words, he's piecing together his sense of time based on the memories he formed during that period. From these experiences, he can build a general sense of the time that has passed based on the events and memories he created. Now let's go back to sleep. During sleep, the brain doesn't form new memories. While it might wander through existing thoughts and memories, this is just a process of organizing and consolidating information. It's not creating new events or recording anything new. Since there are no new experiences or memories, there's nothing for the brain to use as a reference for time passing. As a result, the time we spend asleep feels like it passes instantly. From the moment we close our eyes until we wake up, we naturally don't feel the passage of time, simply because no new memories were created. One of the fascinating paradoxes about our perception of time during sleep is that, under normal circumstances, time seems to pass instantly. But the moment we start dreaming, the opposite happens. Time in dreams can feel much longer than it actually is. Researchers have found that dreams typically last between 5 to 45 minutes in real time. However, inside a dream, it can feel like hours or even days have passed. In many cases, a dream might last only a few seconds in real time. But strangely, someone might wake up and say, "I dreamed that I stayed in a hotel for 3 whole days and remember every detail." Another person might say, "I dreamed I flew from Egypt to Italy, visited the Leaning Tower of Pisa, took pictures, and had a whole adventure. Many of our dreams feel much longer than their actual duration. But how is that possible? The whole phenomenon comes down to the type of input the brain is processing, whether it's real sensory information or just mental imagery. Think of it this way. There's a big difference between actually traveling by car from Cairo to Aswan and simply imagining the trip while sitting on your couch. In the first case, the journey takes about 12 hours, but if you're just imagining it, it might take only 10 seconds in your mind. That's exactly what happens in dreams. Every event you experience in a dream is simply a mental simulation, not bound by real-world time constraints. In dreams, your mind constructs events based on your thoughts and memories. You're essentially telling yourself a story, imagining that you went somewhere and did certain things, without needing any real time to experience them. The dream world operates at incredible speed. Even movement and transportation in dreams aren't restricted by real-world physics. That's why you can feel like you've traveled between multiple countries, had full experiences, and lived through days, while in reality, you've only been asleep for less than an hour. Before we wrap up the episode, let's step away from dreams for a moment. Because a similar phenomenon happens when we're awake, especially during moments of fear or intense sadness. If you've ever spoken to someone who has experienced a serious accident, you'll notice that they can recall every tiny detail. They describe the event as if it was happening in slow motion, remembering every second vividly. This happens because during moments of extreme fear, a part of the brain called the amygdala is activated. Its main job is to detect emergencies and heighten our awareness. In dangerous situations, every part of the brain sends signals to the amygdala, alerting it to what's happening. At this point, the brain starts absorbing an enormous amount of information in a very short time. As a result, the memories formed during these moments are incredibly rich and detailed, packed with intense sensory data. This makes us feel like time is slowing down even though it's passing normally. Indeed, several experiments have been conducted to study this effect. In one study, researchers took a group of people who had arachnophobia, fear of spiders, and asked them to look at venomous spiders for just a few seconds. Afterward, they were asked, "How long do you think you spent looking at the spiders?" Surprisingly, most participants said, "It felt like a really long time." For them, time seemed to drag on, even though only a few seconds had passed in reality. And that's how we've answered the question, why don't we feel the passage of time? If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss an update.